Welcome to a football show, Monday edition NFL Draft Class Recap 2026 edition, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages. That is Paul Kuharsky of paulkuharsky.com. I am Braden Gall. Great to be here. PK, how are you, sir?
I'm well. Had a nice Sunday after the draft, the end of JV season. Saw a very good game.
I have driven to Ridley Park in Columbia, Tennessee, each of the last 2 weekends. And for someone who lives where I live, that sucks. Sucks. It sucks. But hey, we won all 4 matches, so it was a successful trip down for both girls. Lots of stuff to do today on the show. Lots of time for your comments if you want to get in. Already seeing Retra and Bustin in the comments. Lots of things to talk about. Carnell Tate, Keldric Faulk, Anthony Hill. That's one group of players we'll talk about. Then we'll talk about the late round picks in the 5th, 6th, and 7th with Carmona, Singleton, Jackie Marshall, Pat Coogan, Jaren Kanek as well. What did we learn? What did we learn about their strategy? What does this mean for the roster moving forward? What about UDFAs? All kinds of questions, and there'll be lots of time for all of you to get involved if you want to do so on YouTube, of course, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. Just share the product, tell somebody about it. Before we get started, special thanks to everyone who came out on Thursday night. But special thanks to everybody who came out on Saturday night, including the great Paul Kuharsky, as well as Nick Suss and Steve Cavendish and James Foster, and it was a great turnout. We raised over almost $5,000 for the Our Kids Foundation over these 2 nights, which is more than we've raised in any of these draft parties before. We ate a bunch of great barbecue. We drank some really good bourbons, including a Pappy, so special thanks to Sinkers for giving us all a taste of some of the really, really good stuff. Gave away a Peter Skoronsky helmet. Everyone had a gift bag. It was a lot of fun, and I thank Shotgun Willie's Barbecue for hosting it, free of charge, of course, donating that space and time and food. Thanks to Sinkers Beverages for donating all the bourbon and a lot of the stuff that you guys walked away with, and thanks to the reporters, of course, including you, Paul, for committing some of your time on a Saturday night away from family to talk Titans with a bunch of people and be face-to-face in community with each other, PK. It was great. And thank you for your contribution.
No, happy to do it. It's a lot of fun. A lot of fun to mingle with those people in a good cause, clearly.
So, all right, let's get started here first. And me and Nick had a chance to talk on this feed on Friday. I know you've talked a lot about Tate and Faulk on this feed, but now that you've a couple of days removed from it all, and now that you've seen the rest of the strategy and the rest of the draft class, I'm going to start right there with Carnell Tate and Keldric Faulk and say, has your opinion from Thursday night to today changed at all about the strategy, who they went and got, the positions, the value, the trade up, etc.? Where are you at now 3 or 4 days later?
Well, we had a lot of talk about premium positions and the potential for them to not go premium positions early. And there they traded up and hit the 2 biggest premium positions really for them in the first round. And so I'm happy to see them doing that. 2 positions they've addressed poorly historically at receiver, and one that they've not addressed in the first round since 2010, which is a ridiculously long wait since Derek Morgan. And so it's hard not to be enthusiastic about them taking on those positions. I'm not going after Carnell Tate over his production. It's circumstantial, though. Look, if you're drafting a wide receiver at 4 in an ideal world, he's a guy that busted it up at the collegiate level and was dominant. And Carnell Tate made some very impressive catches and had some very impressive games, but was not regularly dominating things. And is not a big yards after the catch guy in his college history, which is the reason people didn't view him as a supreme value in this draft. Now, I don't have a problem with them taking him at 4 if he's their guy, given that, he was going to go at 6 or at 8 at tops. There's not only so much wiggle room there to deal with. Faulk looks like an extremely good value where they got him. We've heard that they liked him, well higher than that. And so value seems good. They've really stocked up that defensive line. 8 new additions, veterans, and now a number first round draft pick since Robert Saleh came. They better be very good.
Yeah. Well, and I think Keldric Faulk is getting a lot of attention from fans because I think people wanted a true pass rusher that's going to get after the quarterback.
I did.
And I think, I mean, me too. I think most people did, but I think they don't. I think there's a disconnect between drafting Keldric Faulk and what fans are projecting from what they wanted out of that pick, which is even if they had picked at 35, I think they were like, no, R. St. Thomas, speed rusher, off the edge, gets after the quarterback. Malachi Lawrence at a UCF, dynamic, bendy guy who gets off the edge and gets after the quarterback. I think while this does help them fill their front four, Keldric Faulk is not that player. That's not what they drafted him to do, nor do I think he's going to play that role. I think he could replace either Jermaine Johnson and John Franklin Myers in the long term. And in the short term, he is one of these top 5 or 6 guys that's going to rotate in and is one of the best run-stopping outside edge players in the conference, in the SEC, therefore in the country. And so I think he's a really talented player, and we can include Anthony Hill in this group too, because I think from a pure talent standpoint, those first 3 picks were all about value and about premium players with premium skills and traits. Anthony Hill far more productive than Faulk or Tate. I would say that I've come around after 4 days of processing and looking at other draft classes. Like, I think to come away with what I consider to be 3 premium talents, I don't know what's going to happen with Hill in terms of what position he plays. But I think I'm way more positive about the feeling of those top 60 picks, those top 3, than I was, I think, when the Carnell Tate pick was made. I think I've come around on seeing that they've added 3 pretty talented players at 2 premium positions, and we'll see what Anthony Hill can do on defense.
Yeah. And, to go to Hill, he's a very good pass rusher at Texas, but the way the Titans have stocked up that defensive front, you would think they wouldn't need a linebacker who's a pass rusher. They need a coverage guy, and his question marks come with coverage. Question marks come with most off the ball linebackers with coverage, but is he the best coverage linebacker that was on the board when they picked? No. Are they going to find ways to incorporate him in the rush? Yes, but then why so much investment in the, I mean, you can never have too many pass rushers, and they're certainly abiding by that theory based on the amount of resources that they're spending on pass rushers. So it's going to be interesting to see how they use Faulk. It's going to be interesting to see how they use Hill. And I think that's what clouds kind of the interpretation of all of this for me, is that there's so much haziness to how they're going to use guys who the rush end is beyond Jake Martin. I said to Saleh, you keep saying, well, this guy can kick inside on pass rush downs. Well, there are only 2 inside guys on pass rush downs. They can't kick 5 guys inside. So that's going to be very interesting.
Can you imagine, like, you've got both A gaps covered, both B gaps covered, and then, like, there's nobody outside? It's an interesting strategy, Coach. Richard says, I hope a Hill is a big upgrade on Barton because they blew out the middle of the draft, possibly at the expense of the interior offensive line. I do not think he is an upgrade whatsoever in pass coverage on Cody Barton. I think he is a significant upgrade on Cody Barton in other areas, but that's not really what Robert Saleh uses his middle linebackers to do. So I know that Mike Borgonzi, Paul, has not said anything about this, nor is the coaching staff. And in fact, hearing Borgonzi's comments about Anthony Hill kind of praising his coverage skills was a little interesting to me, because I'm going to stick with my sort of conspiracy theory on Hill. This is a guy with over 30 tackles for loss in 2 seasons, 17 sacks in 2 seasons, extremely active at and behind the line of scrimmage on defense. And he's 6'2", 240. There are plenty of pass rushers, the Nakobe or the Nolan Smiths of the world, that can come off the edge as a wide 9. R. St. Thomas is not that different in size to Anthony Hill. And if you can use him as a front 4 player on third downs, for example, and then you've got Barton and Gray on the field as coverage players, and then he becomes your wide 9 on 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 12, all of a sudden that's a versatile piece with tons of talent. He's a 4.51 guy. He's got a ton of athletic ability. I would not be surprised to see him Like, if you're going to put Jeffrey Simmons at pass rusher, why not put the guy with 17 sacks in college as a pass rusher?
It's intriguing. It's an intriguing idea. You need to see where these guys start to line up. And, I've got a running depth chart at my site, and it was hard to plug some of these guys in. But I don't have blank spots on the starting lineup anymore. I mean, you can't, right? So I had to move people forward after a draft, after free agency and after a draft. Did they find a starter somewhere from here? Maybe, but you can't count on it now. The bulk of the personnel additions has happened.
Retro says, is Keldric Faulk a better pass rusher right now than Arvell Reese? I would say no. Again, Keldric Faulk, that's not what he does. That's not how he functions. That's not what he is. I don't think that's what they drafted him to be. I think they drafted him to be, hypothetically, if Salah's here for a while, I think they drafted him to be one of the other 3 starting defensive linemen alongside Jeffrey Simmons and fill in the blank. And he is talented and young enough that he actually kind of profiles out similarly to Jeffrey Simmons in terms of just size and talent. And if he can play that big bull rushing edge player, they're going to need that potentially at the end of next year if Jermaine Johnson doesn't work out and they don't want to re-sign him. That's a starting defensive end that you've now paired with John Franklin Myers and Jeffrey Simmons to be one of the 3 biggest, strongest, and best run stuffing 3 people groups that you have. Then you got to still go find the pass rush guy. But
right, you should, in theory, be a good run stuffing defense now to get people into 3rd and 8. Now, who's getting in the backfield on 3rd and 8? I mean, I think you've got some powerful push on 3rd and 8. Do you have an edge finisher? I don't know.
Yeah. Do you think that Femi Oladeja? So here's Daniel kind of asking about this too. It sounds like JJ and Femi are likely the speed rushers on this team, though not particularly speedy. I think it depends on how fast Keldric Faulk comes along. If you can start him at the big edge player, then I think you can use Jermaine Johnson and Femi and have them rotate as the pass rush specialists. But do you think Femi has the ability to do that at all?
I mean, from Jermaine Johnson's arrival, I've had him as the big end with Femi behind him as the big end. Yeah. So are we scrambling everything here? I mean, I think roles are to be determined.
Yeah, agreed. Where is Arden Key on this depth chart? I think he's
Arden Key signed with the Colts.
No, he's asking where would he fit in? Like, I think he's like 4th or 5th on this depth chart as outside defensive end pass rusher.
I mean, he doesn't really fit the 4-3-ish. He's very tweener.
Yeah.
So that's why. I mean, they were done with him anyway. But if they could have had Arden Key for very cheap, I still don't think body type doesn't fit.
Steffi says, do you feel like the fans' disappointment with Tate are in part because we spent 6 months talking about Love? It's more like 3, but like I think that's fair. If people kind of talk themselves into falling in love with Jeremiah Love, they kind of understood that Sonny Styles graded out as maybe the best player in the draft. And so then it feels like they maybe diverted from best player available to some degree, and maybe that's why they're disappointed. I would have had Carnell Tate as like one of the next top options for this team. It wasn't my first prediction range, but it's not as shocking as people think. The Titans shocked the NFL world. Like, I don't think they shocked anybody with Carnell Tate.
And I don't know. I mean, I think people are absolutely presuming they would have taken Tate over. I mean, Love over Tate. I don't have that in evidence.
I think they take David Bailey over anybody else.
Oh, yeah,
that's available. I don't know about Jeremiah Love. I tend to agree with you. All right, let's see here. Sammy says, good to see you, Sammy. As good as Gray was, Hill has the potential to be their best linebacker early, especially with Salah's track record. Number one, I think you are underselling how good Cedric Gray was against the run.
Very good.
And I think you're overselling Anthony Hill's ability to play in space, in coverage, dropping into the secondary. Not only is he not there's not a lot of good tape there, but the instincts are also the question, which I think was what Bedingfield said as well on your website. So any thoughts there on, like, to me, this is how I feel. Like, it's Keldric Faulk at pass rusher with Jermaine Johnson, and then Cedric Gray and Anthony Hill potentially on the field for first and second down. to trigger against the run and have one of the best run stuffing front sevens you could find in the NFL, because that's where Hill and Gray are good. Then you go Cody Barton at linebacker on passing downs, and Hill takes Keldric Faulk's spot on the pass rush spot. I don't know. I'm trying to be creative here.
Yeah, and I mean they've got a lot of options to be creative. I think it's. I'm talking about like it's going to take some time for us to sort out guys' roles. It's going to take some time for them to sort out roles, but I also don't know that everything's going to be predictable. Like this guy is in this spot in nickel, period.
Yeah.
Like I think there could be game to game variations. I think there could be who's hot right now variations. I think it could be more fluid a lineup than we're used to up front.
Yeah, I think that's right. Do you think there's a situation where we see Big Jeff get traded because of Faulk at all? Maybe down the road, but not right now. That would be my answer.
Big Jeff's getting a new contract.
Yeah. What are the biggest holes now after the draft, says Z-Dean? Corners and O-line. I think it is clearly in offensive line in general, and probably nickelback more than corner in particular. They did sign 4 undrafted free agents to corner at that position and a safety. So 5, despite the fact they didn't draft any defensive backs, they have signed 5 of their 11 UDFAs, according to Justin Mello, are in the secondary.
I think it's important to distinguish agreed to terms because they're going to have to cut people to make room for these guys. They only have 4 roster spots available after the draft. They're at 86. So first 4 that they sign when they arrive in the building are free spots. Then they're going to have to cut. Defensive line's really bloated the back end. That's a spot to look for people. Hal Presley, a receiver. Blake Watson, the back end running back, guys like that, I think are in the team. They'd be wise to. I don't know why you don't cut them sooner rather than later. But I think what we were talking about right there.
biggest holes on the roster.
Oh, yeah. I mean, nickelback, Marcus Harris comes out of the weekend in terms of veterans whose position looked to be diminished, as strong as anybody. And Tony Adams not far behind him as the corner nickel and as the third safety nickel. Now these undrafteds might give him competition, but they didn't invest big resources in the position. And so we'll see what kind of competition emerges for those guys. And look, I like Pat Coogan. I mean, he was my favorite talker in there. I'm going to root for him, but there are a lot of deficiencies to his game.
Yeah.
Blake Bedingfield sent me some video of like 5 early snaps against Miami where he just got pushed around, so the motivational speeches and the leadership and the toughness, those are all great, but if they don't translate into effective play, they don't mean much. So I would put Schlotman ahead of him very clearly at the beginning. And then, right guard is Volson versus Carmona versus Slater, unless Slater, takes over center. There's a lot of guys, but none of them are clear-cut favorites. And it's harder to have an offensive line competition with truly telling information because the hitting is limited. So those first 2 preseason games, you would hope the competition, Carolina's one of those teams, we don't know who the other ones are really going to be important. Daniel says, please bring back Zeitler. I mean, I think they've got a crowd of people at that spot now. You bring back Zeitler, and then one of these guys that you brought in isn't making the team. I mean, I guess that's all right if it winds up being Volson, but I don't know. I feel like they brought in enough that they're not going to want to give Zeitler snaps that take away from these guys' chances to mature.
Will Bloodworth, this is a pretty early question here. Where is this team drafting next year after their acquisitions? I mean, look, I think this is a 6 to 8 win team if things go well, and that puts them picking between 8 and 12, and that's as far as we need to take that conversation, to be honest. I think I think true pass rusher, wide receiver, and left tackle are all still options next year. They are not they're not necessities next year the way left tackle probably is. Let's see here. Saleh already dropped the nugget that Harris is the nickelback. He's the biggest nickelback I would have coached at this point, says TKB. Do you think the 60% max rotation of line applies to Simmons, who played well over 80% of last year?
Absolutely applies to Simmons, who's not going to like it.
I agree with that. Let's see. Sammy asked me if I watched any of Fitzgerald from USC. Seems like he's got heavy commitment. Think he could be a free safety for us down the road. I have not had a chance to watch him yet, so I'll keep an eye on the UDFAs as we get closer to like actually knowing who's sort of on the roster. Let's see here. Retro says, agree or not, I think it's a nice post-draft position to be in to say that we have a wide receiver 1 as a Titans fan. Do they have a wide receiver 1, or do they have 3 really good 2s?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think it depends partially on how Carnell Tate plays, and it depends partially on how this draft is judged and the high part of this draft. So what does Arvell Reese do? What does Sonny Styles do for the judgment of Carnell Tate? And if he winds up being a high-level receiver 2, you want more than that at 4, but maybe more than that at 4 was not available in this draft, and that Arvell Reese won't be better than a high wide receiver 2, and maybe Sonny Styles won't be better than a high-level wide receiver 2. And quite frankly, a high-level wide receiver 2 is better than anything the Titans have right now.
And I would argue, like, if you have one of the best number 2s in the NFL, you could argue that is better than a number 1 middle linebacker. I'm not necessarily making that case, but I think you could make that case.
I mean, who are the highest level 2s in the league? T. Higgins.
Is T. Higgins more valuable to a football team than Fred Warner is? And that's the best number 1, right? Like go down to the last, let's say the 15th, the average league starting middle linebacker.
Yeah, I would take Fred out of it. Even go just to the 5th. The 5th best middle linebacker is definitely not as valuable as T. Higgins has been.
Okay. I think that's the way to look at it.
Devontae Smith there, we're getting some good examples, or George Pickens.
Devontae Smith is I don't know if he's but I don't know if he's good enough to be a number 1. And this maybe is a good comparison to Carnell Tate, because I think Devontae Smith and Carnell Tate have a lot of similarities in their games. Smith is a little bit more explosive and dynamic with the ball in his hands after the catch, but like he's just a route tacticianer who just knows how to manipulate coverage, and I think Carnell Tate's going to be like that. I think Devontae Smith is at his best when there's A.J. Brown on the other side of the field. And so now that we're going to find, like if Devontae Smith has to be the number 1, where you're going to roll coverages, you're going to have press cover, everyone's focused on you defensively, that's where I'm curious. I think Carnell Tate can be a great player in an offense. I don't know if he's I'm going to take control of a defense and just you can't stop me, and you have
who
to
did the Eagles draft there? Presuming AJ's on his way out.
They got not Concepcion. They got Mekhi Lemon, and I think Lemon and Smith are low 1s, high 2s. So we'll see. I do think there is like I've come around on Tate as the right pick here. I still want to see what Arvell Reese does. I understand the pick over Styles. And I do think Daniel said this earlier, and I'll have to go back and find it. But I do agree with this, that if they had not taken him, the Giants were not going to do it, and the Chiefs were coming up to 6 to get him, to take Carnell Tate. So you could call it a reach, but it was a very small reach based on value.
Two-spot thing is not a reach. So
that's right.
You cannot like
That's
it,
right.
but I don't think you can call it a reach. I do think you can call it a surprise.
That's fair. That's fair.
It was a surprise for
That's
sure.
Fair. Lance says, why can't Tate be a number 1?
He doesn't run with the ball in his hands the way top receivers in the league. Now, maybe he gets better at that. Maybe he gets stronger at that. Maybe better quarterbacking leads him more. And look, he ran with the ball in his hands because he was behind the defense, right? But he's got to break the initial contact in the NFL. And that's the thing that holds him back from projecting for a lot of people to be a clear cut, like this guy dictates coverage receiver.
How would you grade Borgonzi's subterfuge, says Steffi? I don't think any of us had him taking Tate or trading back up into the first. I think trading back into the first is just sort of opportunities that present every general manager. I don't think that's
the draft unfolds. That's not,
yeah. But again, I think Tate is less of a surprise. Like he telegraphed Tate over every other receiver in this class pretty clearly back at the combine and in his all the way to his previous the NFL his last press conference before the draft, where he said, like, every time he talked about the wide receiver class, it was Carnell Tate as by name and then no one else until he talked about the second group of players. And at a position of need with a rookie quarterback, I just don't think anyone should be shocked that Carnell Tate was the pick here. I just that part is a little. That's the only part that I would quibble with a little bit, but I don't, like, it was Jeremiah Love or it was Arvell Reese. That's what we thought. The next best available player on their board was almost always Carnell Tate.
Yeah, we didn't know, though, who they liked out of the available options for sure. I thought he's a little bit subterfuge. He said very clearly he didn't like the running back class beyond Love, and they took a running back in the fifth.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think he was intentionally plotting, particularly with the local media, to throw us off course. He just didn't do anything to put us on course.
Richard says, being a homer, I think the Yak issue was a quarterback wasn't very good, even though he was a Heisman finalist. Here's my issue, Richard, is they force-fed Carnell Tate lots of screen plays most of the season. And yes, somebody else said how much better he got. Daniel said how much better. He did get better. He was given opportunities to make plays without the ball on purpose and didn't really do it. And so, again, you can still be worth the pick, though, at 4. You can still be a number 1 and be a down the field. Like, DeAndre Hopkins doesn't make things happen after the catch, but he was a really good number 1 for a number of years because you could not cover him at the point of attack. He would go up and get the ball every time because he's got the dog in him. So,
yeah. And if he's DeAndre Hopkins, if he's close to DeAndre Hopkins, that will be a very good pick.
A poor man's DeAndre Hopkins will be one of the better receivers this organization's ever had. So, all right, let's take a pause for the comments, though. I want to get back to your comments here in a second. But Fernando Carmona, you've got Jackie Marshall, defensive tackle out of Baylor, Carmona out of Arkansas. You mentioned Pat Coogan at 194. I'll get to Singleton and Kanek in a second. But let's look at those big fellas. You've kind of talked a lot about the defensive line. There's just not that many slots available on the roster for more defensive linemen. I thought that was the strangest pick, Jackie Marshall. I may not agree with taking Fernando Carmona over, by the way, Sam Hecht out of Kansas State, Bo Stevens out of Iowa. You got the Burton kid, I believe, out of Kentucky, and then Billy Schroth out of Notre Dame, all still on the board when you took Carmona. So it's not about the position. So if you love that player, okay, I'm willing to listen to what you have to say. You work in the NFL, I do not, so I'm not going to sit here and I would have taken Sam Hecht, but what do I know? The strategy of taking the 2 offensive linemen, no problem with that. We'll see if it works out. The strategy of taking Jackie Marshall, a defensive tackle, at 184, he started out as an edge player as he came out of high school, so he does have a little bit more athletic ability than a true nose tackle or a defensive lineman. 6'2", 295. That's the one that I think, if I had to say that's the strangest pick of all of them, I think that's the strangest pick of all of them.
I agree with you. Just that so many resources into defensive line. Now, I presume what happens there is they get to 184 and they've got Jackie Marshall substantially higher than that, and they're sticking to a thing where it says this guy's too good for us not to take, and he happens to be at a place where we've invested a lot, but we're not going to go against taking a guy that outscores a lot of people that are available to us at this time, and so we're taking him. But and it's only 10 spots ahead of Coogan. But it seems to me that there's no DB on your board that you like around 184 or that you could have traded back and gotten there. I don't know. That's the one, though, that strikes me as awfully redundant.
All right, talk us through Carmona and Coogan, and I guess maybe we don't need to get too deep into this. I think they're in a group of 5 competing for 2 spots. Carmona, as James has said many times, James Foster has said, and he said it on Saturday night, he had the real high profile after the whistle mistake that he's made and talked a lot about it. But it does not appear that when James has watched film of Carmona that he's seeing the nasty streak that he's talking about. So that's going to be interesting to see.
So
I think
Carmona categorized himself as
Right.
tough and nasty.
I think Coogan is a pretty straightforward evaluation. He's a great locker room guy. He knows ball. He's played for 2 really high-level football teams in national championship situations. He is an MVP of the Rose Bowl. Like, he checks every single box other than if you just get physically dominated by better players, you're not going to make it. So I like the pick. I like that one of the themes I'm going to ask you about, one of the themes that I think that describes this draft class is they were convicted in their plan. And you could say that about Tate. You could say that about trading up to get Faulk. You could say that about trading up to get Hill. And I think you could say that about getting Pat Coogan. They targeted him. They liked him. They went and got him, and they believe in that. We'll see if it works. But he has everything you want to be a guy that makes a locker room and a position group better.
Absolutely. Just can they get him to a level where he's good enough? And listen, Borgonzi said this at the owners' meetings. You can find offensive linemen late who are lacking some traits, but can play in tight quarters with toughness and smarts. And it seems to me that Carmona is that to a degree, and Coogan is the definition of that, poster boy for that. And he also said, having a really good understanding of your limitations can help you be effective with what you've got. And if 2 of you are doing it side by side, it could really help. So I think there's a lot of prayerfulness, though, to that to that plan. And it's certainly not a frontline plan. It's a patchwork plan.
Yeah.
So we'll see. If these guys are in the mix there, that's great. If they're not, you're going to see Schlotman or Volson or Slater, who are also not top tier guys. But we've seen Brasillo patch together lines that have, first rounder, second rounder, fifth rounder, undrafted. Yep. With the Raiders, he did it, and he got very good production. The Titans are counting on him to do it here.
Do you think that so the 5 guys, you got Schlotman and Volson as the signees, you got Jackson Slater from last year, and then you've got Carmona and Coogan. Those are the 5 that are going to compete for 2 spots, basically, yep. for lack of a better explanation. Do you think that they are so comfortable with their 2 free agent signings in Schlotman and Volson and very confident in a guy they drafted and worked on in Jackson Slater? Do you think that it was extra confidence in those guys paired with a belief in Coogan that's why they went with this plan? Or do you think it's how the draft unfolded? They couldn't get a guy. They saw Anthony Hill. They saw Keldric Faulk. They had to go get value and passed on, hot, quote unquote, better players. There's a chance that I had been told late in the first round that they were trading up to get an offensive lineman. Well, a couple of offensive linemen went off the board right before they traded up to get Faulk. So there's a chance that was the strategy, was to go get an elite level blocker. So do you think it's more that they really believe the group they have and they trust those guys and they're a little underrated by us? Or do you think it's more of how the draft fell and they just ended up with, a guy nobody had graded at 142 and Pat Coogan, who's limited at 194?
I think it's a little bit of both. Like, is this their ideal scenario? Is this what they set out to do? No. But is this a scenario that they were going in willing to accept? Obviously, yes. Are they? I don't think they're going to go look for help right now or talk to Zeitler right now. But are they 2 weeks into camp, if things aren't going well, going to be open to that? I think, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, let's talk about Nick Singleton and Jaren Kanek. I actually really like these 2 picks. Again, when you are throwing darts at offensive skill position players late in the draft, there's a lot of upside to have with these guys. And I think Singleton is very raw upside from a talent perspective. He's got great speed. He is a good pass catcher out of the backfield. He is a willing blocker in pass pro. He's got to refine some technique. There were some complaints in the comments earlier about sort of the vision, how he just kind of runs into a wall. I agree that they're going to have to finely tune some of that, but they're not drafting him in the 5th round, late in the 5th round, to be a starting running back and to be a first and second down guy. He is a complementary piece that could grow into to a more productive piece. But he's a guy who has all the skills. When I look at running backs, PK, and this is fantasy football, this is regular, like, doesn't matter. I see guys that had pedigree coming out of high school because they had so much athletic ability, were fairly productive and successful in college. They get drafted in the 4th, 5th, 6th round because the position is devalued, and they go on to be pretty productive players for teams. Not Saquon Barkley, but pretty productive players. And I actually I've always liked Nick Singleton as a player. He did not realize all of his potential. I think this is a sneaky good value player, and I think he gives them something they do not have, which is breakaway speed, pass catching threat, and again, the willingness to put in the work to protect when it comes to the blitz. I actually really like the pick at Nick Singleton. Again, we're talking about the 165th pick in the draft here.
Also, does this signal that maybe there'll be a one cut and go, more of a one cut and go run game? Because he could be good at that. Like, do I go here or do I go there? I make one decision, I make one cut, and I go, as opposed to I need to sort through some real options here in terms of looking around and making some decisions. Chris Johnson. Do we think Chris Johnson had great vision? I mean, that's not the first thing that comes to mind with Chris Johnson. It's the speed. Chris Johnson made one cut and went. Now, I do think he had good vision in decisions he had to make later, but those are against DBs, and you don't have to do a hell of a lot to beat a DB when you're fast.
I know you're not comparing him to Chris Johnson, but Chris Johnson's small space agility, short space agility, the left-right twitchiness, that's not necessarily what Singleton is. He's a straight-line speed guy. But I think, again, there's room for development for this player. There's a room to be third on the depth chart to allow him to develop in. And, again, one of the things you've got – the only issue I have with this pick is I think he had 6 career fumbles. That will keep you from the field you will never see the field if you cannot protect the football at that position. But this number 2 reason you don't see the field is not working hard to pick up the blitz, to not help in pass pro. And the idea that this guy is physical and likes to do it doesn't mean he's great at it yet, but that he likes to do it I think that's a thing that puts you on the field on 3rd and 12.
I think if he's good, and early, and things don't go well for Pollard this year, maybe, an ankle or something, that Singleton could wind up with a lot of carries.
I think Singleton, especially if they do go, I don't think they're going to have that zone scheme, right, where you're doing the one cut and go, find the crease and go, or hit it to the outside. But he's got some ability, he's got some talent, and we'll see what happens. Kanek, on the other hand, he's not an explosive athlete. He's not overly large. He's 6'2", 235. He's more of a cut from the Chig cloth, but he's not nearly as explosive, and he's not as good of a blocker. So he's a poor man's Chig, but he does do everything. And if you watched him at Oklahoma this year, he was a converted linebacker. He played linebacker for 3 years. They converted him to tight end. He caught over 40 passes this year in an offense that had no balance at all. It was all just passing attack. I think he brings a lot of intrigue to this roster as a third tight end or a 4th tight end. I don't know where he's going to fit or if he makes the team, but I always really liked his versatility. He's not Kyle Juszczyk. He's not as good a blocker as like Ben Sinnott at Washington, but he's got some of those skills. You could move him into the backfield. You could have him be a dummy. You could have him float out of in pass catching routes. You could have him go over the middle. I just think he's like one of those kind of Swiss Army knife guys. He may not be good at anything in terms of enough to see the field, but I do think he's good at a lot of things. He may not be great at anything.
I think it'd be a good special teamer, which would be his route onto the roster. Is he better than David Martin Robinson? David Martin Robinson to me is just a guy. So if he could be just a guy plus, I think he could probably beat him out. And the one thing I found interesting, 44 catches, which is a good amount of catches for a guy in his role, and impressive amount of catches for a guy that converted back to offense after 3 years as a linebacker, did not find the end zone in those 45 catches.
And he was not a red zone target, no. But 3rd and 6 on your own 45, he was a heavy option in the passing attack for Oklahoma. He was one of the more dependable players on that team, with a lot of really good receivers, frankly, they had on that roster. All right, who was your favorite pick out of all of this? Like, just value versus expectation. We'll talk about what the roster is supposed to look like and what you think this team could actually do now that free agency and the draft is done. But do you have a couple, like, are there names that stand out to you on this list that you just go, man, I just love what they did there?
Well, I mean, I said this last night at the event. I really like Coogan and root for Coogan because he's such a good talker, leader type. So I want a guy like that to pan out. I'm not that confident he will, the more I've heard from people about him and seen some of his work. But I think he'd be a great story, and he'd be a great guy to be, talking on behalf of this franchise. I like Tate. I mean, I've been wide receiver desperate for this team for a long time. And I think he needs to walk in the door and be the best guy. And I think he should be. Here's one thing: the Titans dropped a lot of passes last year. Wan'Dale Robinson doesn't drop passes, and Carnell Tate doesn't drop passes. So I think there's kind of a unseen gain, if you will.
I think Singleton and Kanek fit into that mold as lesser pieces, but I think they fit into that mold too.
So that's an upgrade for this team that should really help Cam Ward in a category that gets kind of underscored. But I hope for big things for Tate. I hope he can get better at the area that kind of held him back. I don't know that he's going to be, a one in the tradition of ones around the league, but I think it could be a one, a better one than the Titans have had in the form of anybody but AJ Brown, virtually in the whole Titans era.
Here's my thing. Like, I find it hard to find the one pick that is my favorite. I like
them all so much.
That's the problem. Is when I look at this is what's interesting about your comment. Any one individual pick, I have questions. I feel like, okay, sure, you got some value with Faulk. I like the player, but like, he doesn't necessarily feel a need. Anthony Hill, I really love the player, but like, I'm just not sure what position he's going to play. I've come around on Tate like you. I think I am more positive and bullish on taking Carnell Tate. You are so convicted. We talked about this on Friday. They were so convicted that he was clearly the best player at his position in this draft, at a position of need, in a draft that isn't very good. So this is like my when I see, and because my next question is going to be like, what do you see holistically from this class that tells us Mike Borgonzi's strategy or vision for the team? And I like Singleton and Coogan. I think those are nice picks. I don't like Carmona. I don't like Marshall. I could get behind Kanek a little bit there. I'm very torn on Anthony Hill internally. I see tons of athletic ability and upside, but like lots of questions in coverage. And then Tate and Faulk, we've had so many discussions about this. But I do think as a whole picture, I like the whole picture. And they added high-level talent to Robert Saleh's front seven. They added playmaking ability and dependability to Cam Ward's offense in the form of Carnell Tate and Singleton. They drafted young players across the board, guys who are 20, 21 years old that are going to develop quickly and have lots of upside. They address needs at premium positions and needs at non-premium positions. Outside of the Jackie Marshall pick, which could have been a DB, I may not love any individual pick a lot, but I do like the larger strategy and the picture of the whole, if that makes sense. So where are you at on the whole strategy here?
Yeah, like I feel like it's a sound strategy, right? I don't know. I feel dumb kind of in the context of the whole draft, saying like, I don't feel like it's a ceiling raising draft. And I think this was generally the tone about free agency also, but it's a floor raising. So this has been a floor raising offseason, as opposed to a ceiling lifting
I don't think they're ready to put the ceiling on yet. I think they still got to build the first floor,
of that. Yeah. But I also think, like, I don't know how many options there were in free agency that were going to really elevate the ceiling. And I don't know in this draft, I mean, how much room there was for that, even drafting at 4. And, I just think it was a shitty year to be drafting.
I agree. If you look at the rest of the division too, I really like the Keelan Rutledge pick and the Cade McDonald pick for Houston. Those are dependable trench warfare picks for a team that's pretty close to being Super Bowl ready.
That team knows what it is. I mean, that team's really reinforcing what it is, right?
And I like the Kamari Ramsey pick later. I like the first 4 picks for the Colts. 3 of them on defense, 1 of them the interior offensive line. C.J. Allen, A.J. Halsey, and Brian Betcher. But like I you know me, neither of us are homers here. I think the Titans draft is the best in the division. Just on paper. I don't know what the Jaguars are doing. There's not I like the Husky and the Pregnon picks. So those are two really good picks there. They got them kind of late because they had 3 third-rounders. But Cade McDonald for Houston's a really good value. The Texans had to trade up to get Keelan Rutledge. I'm trying not to be a homer here, but I like the talent and the strategy and the depth of the Titans class better than everyone else in the division.
I think that's reasonable. Here, I wanted to get in this one thing with regard to the Jaguars. The Jaguars, look, it doesn't look good. If you take 1 or 2 guys that are far off of the consensus, then I say, hey, but they know something you don't know, or whatever. When your whole thing strays so far from the consensus, and you hear other teams kind of questioning what that team did, then I have some questions. But this spurred, like yesterday, I almost tweeted. I was at my kid's game and I tried to unplug, but I almost tweeted like, happy consensus board defense day, because the whole draft industrial complex was just out in full force defending what it does. And I just wanted to address this and get your take on it. I mean, look, there are some guys who are very good at this and talk to GMs and get really good feedback. And then there are a bunch of guys who do a lot of copying of those good guys, or pretend to be in the know, or, think they're scouts who are not scouts, who would, kill to work for a team and are a billion miles away from working for a team. So this idea that straying from the consensus board, the Jaguars went a long way from it. San Francisco got killed for it. Who else? There are 2 other teams. There are 4 teams that
go. The Rams, maybe.
Board. And just this idea that, like, and I've said this before, this whole thing, this setup is just so bizarre to me. And what other, just keep it to sports. And what other thing do we, the media, set up a list with some inside information, but not that much. And then we hold teams to account as to how they match up to what we set up. It is a bizarre thing. And then when they
preseason college football magazines, maybe.
Yeah. And then when they don't match up, we defend ourselves. I don't want to put myself in it because I'm not in it. But the business defends itself like, no, this consensus board has proven to be the thing. And these teams that stray, or these picks that stray over time, have shown themselves not to be good. That's fine if that's the case. I still don't think consensus board trumps. There are some idiots in every business, right? So there are some idiot personnel people out there, and there are some teams that don't draft well. But I'm still willing to let teams do their thing more than I am to judge them against the consensus big board.
Yeah, I think there's two ways also to evaluate draft experts / reporters, right? There's 2 different things. There's like, how good are you at actually scouting players? And I got started at Rivals.com helping scout players. And so there's a different skill set to reporting what multiple general managers might think about a player. That's a reporter skill set. That's a media skill set versus looking at 3 offensive guards and being able to accurately predict which of the three will be the best football player. Those are they're so dramatically different skills that it's really, really hard to find the person, the man or woman, that can do both of those things. Like, I personally like Matt Miller. I think Matt Miller does a really good job of both. I think he's a better talent evaluator, and he's not really a reporter. But I think now that he's at ESPN, he has access to information from the reporters that help him shade and kind of paint the picture of what he thinks the draft's going to look like. And I think the most important thing in all of this, and I think this is true of recruiting services as well, the people who make millions of dollars to do this stuff, Kyle Shanahan, general managers, college football coaches, Nick Saban, they all miss all the time. It is an inexact science. The guys who make millions of dollars to make these decisions screw it up every single year. So I give a little bit more leeway to the consensus stuff. I don't really give a shit about the defense of the consensus. Like, that's the thing that doesn't bother me because I don't see it and I don't pay attention to it. The consensus to me is sort of like a useful tool to give you it gives you a general sense of what maybe people think about this stuff. But at the end of the same with recruiting rankings, like, here's a general list of the top 400 players. Like, we all know it's not going to be right, but we kind of use it as a general gauge of who got the best talent on a roster. And the broader you go with that data, the more accurate you get, right? The more high draft picks you have, the better your team should be. The more 5 stars, the better you should have overall in general. But like, these college football coaches make millions of dollars and they misevaluate all the time. These general managers get fired all the time for picking the wrong guy. And so I just don't kill everybody for being, like, again, the greatest baseball hitter of all time got out 70% of the time. Like, so I guess I just look at it and go, it's useful. It's interesting. Like, the San Francisco thing is fascinating to me because I'm with you. I think the defense of the consensus thing, and as a reporter asking the organization why they go off the consensus board, I think is a dumb question in the media. But at the same time, they have not been good at drafting players when they go off the board. So, like, it's kind of both sides are true, right?
Yeah. Same time, I mean, San Francisco, pretty damn good organization.
Great football team.
Track record.
Yes. Yes. I mean, they've hit on some really great players. It's just, again, I look at this and what I care about is value at the draft slot. And that is not necessarily based on consensus, but just like, I think Anthony Hill is a high level talent. You got him, late in the second round. Let's see what happens. I think that's good value, right? And so I care about value. I care about logic and strategy. How did you fill the needs that you have at the right place? Did you overspend on anything in terms of trading, which I don't think either of the two trades, I think the Titans trades were totally fine and within the realm of reasonable and okay. And I think they addressed some needs. So it's like, I think they just kind of checked most of the strategy boxes. And then it's just up to the players and the GM to say, like, oh yeah, Tate was actually the one you're supposed to get, right? Like, we don't know. Like,
I don't know about the trades either. Like, I understand there are two kind of trades to me. One, like, we got to get this guy. Like, we like this guy a lot. We got to go get him because somebody else is going to get him. And another one where, like, we feel like this guy is so great a value right now, whether somebody's coming to get him or not. It's too good for us not to get Keldric Faulk at 31 because we have him at 17 or 20. So I don't know how these are scored, but when you go up for Anthony Hill, what were they, 66? And they go up to
69 to 60.
69 to 60. And you leave yourself, what is that, an 82 spot gap where you're waiting from the 2nd to the 5th. That is a long, long time where people said there were a lot of good players in that range. And it is Anthony Hill. So then Anthony Hill's standard to me becomes the measuring of him as a good player becomes bigger than that. Like Des Fitzpatrick's failure became bigger because not only did they spend a 4th round pick on Des Fitzpatrick, they traded up to spend a 4th round pick on Des Fitzpatrick.
And we all knew who they passed on immediately thereafter, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. This is the Carmona of it for me. Because like this, Fernando Carmona is the interesting one for me because you claim you loved Coogan and target him, right? So, but not enough to go get him at 142. You had a long wait. You had a really long wait. And so you knew you had to target some. You knew when you made the Hill pick that you had to think this is who we think we can get 100 picks later, almost 80 picks later. Yeah. You passed on a bunch.
You had to say one of these 3 or 4 is That's our right. guy at 142.
And they passed on 4 or 5 guys that were all significantly ahead of Carmona in terms of where they were ranked. And so to me, that's what makes that one the interesting one here. Like Jackie Marshall, like you're talking about a 6th-round pick. It is what it is. Like you threw a dart on a guy. You really liked him. Good for you. It didn't work out. How many 6th-round defensive linemen start on the NFL? Probably not very many. But like an early 5th-round offensive lineman, that's where you find some starters sometimes at guards. And you had to wait a long time to get him. And guys like Sam Hecht and others were there that everyone loved. And so that's the one where I'm kind of going, that one could come back and be the story, the Des Fitzpatrick story. But it doesn't matter as much to people because it's not a receiver, right? It's a guard. So it doesn't matter as much to people. So, look, I think they did a good job here across the board. I like you, with all coaches that we have previous opinions on and player. Let's see what happens. Clean slate for everybody. Let's see what happens. Is there anything you Sinkers Beverages, everybody go support Sinkers Beverages, 5-time liquor store of the year, of course. Thanks to them for supporting and creating and putting on another fantastic NFL draft weekend. We're gonna have some stuff I think throughout the summer where we're gonna do a Preds draft watch party. We did it last year. I think we'll do it again this year. We're gonna try to find some ways to get together around training camp as well. So I just think getting more folks together in real life is what everybody's craving right now. I know I'm craving that. Sinkers is a huge supporter of that. Get together and have a beverage with people that you care about, like-minded, people that are interested in the same things and like spending time together. So special thanks to you, Paul, and to Nick for helping out as well, and to ML Rose and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue for donating the space and the food and the time. Stillman did a great job with Chris Childers on their show on Thursday night. It was fantastic. So lots of fun was had by everybody. We appreciate that as well. Is there anything? I'm going to scale back even further. Mike Borgonzi has now had 2 draft classes. Anything at all if you combine the 2 of them? I mean, like, bunch of offensive linemen, bunch of skill weapons around Cam Ward, and they drafted Cam Ward. They drafted a lot of offense. Femi, Winston, and now you've added Faulk and Hill. 2nd round, a lot of talent on defense in that late 1st, early 2nd round. That's where they've gone there. Anything strategically that you can look at the 2 classes together and say this is a Mike Borgonzi type of draft pick?
Character guys, for sure. And he said that coming in, and I was skeptical because he made it sound like they did that in Kansas City where Tyreek Hill, punched a pregnant woman in the stomach. And
not while he was at Kansas City, but in the draft process. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, you took a guy who did that.
That's right.
And Kareem Hunt, they brought in as a free agent who had, some troubling things in his background. I don't think that was a big consideration in Kansas City like he sold it to be, but it is a big consideration for him. I mean, I don't think there's any character questions on anybody that he drafted in the last 2 years, plus guys that he inherited from Rand Carthon's draft who not
they're gone
character questions, but maybe attitude questions in Jarvis Brownlee and Tavondre Sweat. He didn't hesitate to ship out in a relative hurry. And I think you had Bustin' Diamond's comments up there. Which is really good. He likes traitsy leaders who are as clean as a whistle. Yep. You could put that on a bumper sticker.
There you go. Maybe a step slow, maybe a little bit weaker, but traitsy leaders that are clean as a whistle. There you go. All right. Look, paulkuharsky.com, great website to get all the coverage that's happening, whether it's UDFAs, whether it's the depth chart. We'll get to we have lots of time to talk expectations. We have lots of time to talk about position battles. Do you think most of how much of the roster do you think of the 53, like how many do you think are on the roster right now? Like almost all of them?
Yeah, I would say 50, 51.
So maybe 1 or 2 spots could churn with some new acquisition somewhere. That could be a trade. That could be trading Levis. That could be adding a late free agent. It could be a number of things. But and for those that want them to go get Pickens and or Jennings, like they have now like 7 receivers.
Pickens is not a traitsy leader who is clean as a whistle.
That's right. They also have like their top 5 receivers now are set. Like
These
the top
guys
5 are set.
need space. Virtually everybody they've got now needs space to be developed and get a chance.
That's right.
That's why, like, the Zeitler thing doesn't make any sense to me at this point. Is he better than what they have at right guard? Yes, but are they looking to go a different, fresh, new, young direction? Who's going to practice every day? Yes.
There you go. There you go. All right, my guy. Always a pleasure to see you. We'll talk next week. Nick Suss and I up on Thursday as well. So other than that, have a great one. PaulKuharsky.com. Support good journalism and, of course, support Sinkers Beverages and all good local businesses.
Coming Wednesday from Drew Beatty, a good film breakdown of Keldric Faulk. So we'll get a good look at what exactly he does and doesn't do.
There you go. Really, really good coverage across the network right now. You got a general manager search for the Predators, so the gold standard, the best club in North America, possibly outside of Vancouver because Vancouver's in Canada, but maybe the best club in America. Nashville SC dominating right now. They've got, of course, a match in the CONCACAF Cup at home on Tuesday night, so Club and Country's got you covered there. Hot Read podcast will be up later this week, SEC Football Live as well, so lots of good stuff across the network covering all sports that you folks in Middle Tennessee care about. With none of the hot takes and none of the yelling and screaming and enrage bait, none of that stuff. Just hopefully smart, nuanced conversation, thoughtful coverage of your favorite teams. For Paul Kuharsky, I am Braden Gall. Thank you all for being involved in the comments. Share the show. Tell somebody about it. We will talk to you guys on Thursday.